Princess Zara sat in the sleek, high-tech spaceship as it zoomed through the stars. She was the youngest and brightest diplomat of the HFY Empire, a powerful alien race known for their advanced technology and strict, formal society. The HFY people had always valued order, structure, and tradition. No one made a move without permission, and every action had its place. But Zara was different. She was curious about other cultures, and she had heard stories of Earth, chaotic, wild, and filled with strange, unpredictable customs. Today, Zara was on a mission to Earth as part of a diplomatic delegation. The Galactic Council, a group made up of many alien species, had chosen Earth as the next planet to join their peaceful alliance. The Council believed that Earth could learn a lot from the more advanced civilizations, but Zara wasn't so sure. Humans were messy, loud, and disorganized. Their history was full of wars, misunderstandings, and confusion. The HFY had never seen the appeal of such a disordered planet. As the spaceship landed in Washington, D.C., the capital of Earth, Zara felt a mixture of excitement and worry. She had studied Earth's history and customs, but nothing could have prepared her for the reality of being on such an unpredictable planet. Zara had never met a human before, and she was about to face them for the first time. Her mind raced with questions. How would they behave? Would they respect the HFY ways, or would they be too chaotic? The doors of the spaceship opened with a soft hiss. Zara stepped out, her silver gown shimmering in the Earth sunlight. A group of Earth diplomats waited for her, along with a small crowd of curious onlookers. Zara's heart raced as she walked down the steps, her eyes scanning the crowd. The humans didn't look so scary. In fact, they looked a bit curious. They waved and smiled, but Zara didn't know how to react. In HFY culture, smiles were often seen as signs of weakness. To her, the humans seemed too open, too free. A tall man in a blue suit stepped forward, offering her a handshake. Zara stared at his hand for a moment, unsure of what to do. She had read about handshakes in her research, but it felt strange. Why would anyone touch another person's hand like this? "This is Earth's way of greeting," the man said with a smile. "I'm Ambassador James. It's an honor to meet you, Princess Zara." Zara hesitated for a moment longer, then slowly reached out her hand. She shook his firmly, the sensation still unfamiliar to her. The ambassador's grip was warm and firm, and his eyes held a spark of friendliness that made Zara feel slightly less uncomfortable. "Welcome to Earth," he said. "We're excited to learn from the HFY Empire. I'm sure we can help each other." Zara nodded politely but didn't know how to respond. She had been taught that diplomacy was about control, about maintaining power and distance, but these humans didn't seem to have any interest in that. They were smiling, talking openly, and acting so casual. It was as though they had no sense of boundaries, no need for the careful structure that Zara had grown up with. As they led her to a nearby building for a meeting, Zara couldn't help but notice the humans around her. Some were laughing, others were talking in groups, and a few even hugged each other. She watched them carefully, trying to understand. In HFY culture, physical contact was almost forbidden unless it was necessary. Yet these humans touched each other so easily, without fear, without hesitation. It was confusing to Zara, but also fascinating. During the meeting, Zara sat quietly, listening to the Earth diplomats speak. They were discussing trade, alliances, and the possibility of cooperation between the two worlds. But Zara's mind kept drifting back to the strange, spontaneous behavior she had seen outside the building. She had learned that humans didn't need permission to do anything. They just acted. They smiled, touched, laughed, and kissed without even thinking about it. In her world, such actions would have been seen as a sign of weakness or disrespect. Princess Zara didn't know it yet, but Earth's customs were going to challenge everything she had ever known. The humans were teaching her one lesson already. On Earth, you didn't need permission to be yourself. The evening air was warm and buzzing with excitement. Princess Zara, now fully dressed in her ceremonial gown, stood beside Ambassador James as they entered a grand building in the heart of Washington, D.C. It was the night of the Earthly Gala, a special event designed to celebrate the diplomatic exchange between Earth and the Caithar Empire. Humans were excited. Zora could tell by the way they spoke, smiled, and laughed together. Everything about this planet was so different. Zora had never been to a gathering like this. In her empire, galas were stiff, formal, and full of strict rules. No one dared to speak too freely, and guests were expected to follow a certain order. But as she stepped into the ballroom, Zora felt overwhelmed by the laughter, the easy conversations, and the joy that filled the air. Humans didn't seem to be following any rules at all. The room was filled with bright lights, shimmering decorations, and a sea of smiling faces. Humans were dressed in all sorts of outfits, some elegant, some casual, some a mix of both. There was no uniformity, no structure, and it unsettled Zora. She was used to everything having its place, but here, there was freedom. It was both exciting and confusing at the same time. Ambassador James led Zora to a large table where a few Earth diplomats were already seated. As she took her place, Zora's eyes darted around the room, trying to understand what was happening. People were talking and laughing openly, some even hugging each other. Zora had never seen such closeness among strangers. In her culture, physical touch was reserved for the most intimate relationships, and even then, it was formal. Here, people seemed to touch each other without thinking, without any concern. She was introduced to a woman named Samantha, who greeted her with a big, welcoming smile. Zora had heard of Earth's hospitality, but it was strange to see it in action. Samantha offered her hand, and Zora, unsure what to do, took it awkwardly. To her surprise, Samantha squeezed her hand gently and said, "It's so good to meet you, Princess Zora. Welcome to Earth." Zora nodded politely, though she couldn't help feeling uncomfortable. This wasn't what she had expected. Earth seemed to be a place where rules didn't matter. There was no formality, no proper way to behave. People just did what they wanted, when they wanted. As the evening went on, Zora tried to relax and observe. A few humans stood up to speak, but their voices were casual, even playful. They told jokes, shared stories, and sometimes even sang songs. There was no structure to their speeches, no formalities, just people being themselves. The more Zora watched, the more she realized how different humans were from her own people. They didn't need permission to laugh, to dance, or to speak their minds. They simply did it. Then, something caught Zora's eye. Across the room, she saw a young couple standing together. The man leaned forward and kissed the woman on the cheek. It wasn't a quick peck or a formal greeting. It was a soft, meaningful kiss. Zora's heart skipped a beat. She had seen this kind of thing in her studies of Earth, but it had never seemed so real before. She couldn't understand it. In the Caithar Empire, kisses were carefully planned. They had meaning, and you never kissed someone without permission. But here, humans kissed each other freely, as though it was nothing special. Zora felt a wave of confusion. Why would humans kiss each other without permission? Without a thought? Was it a sign of disrespect? Or was it something else entirely? The more she thought about it, the more she felt that Earth's customs didn't make sense at all. But at the same time, there was something beautiful about it. The kiss wasn't forced, it wasn't calculated, it was just an expression of emotion, of love, of connection. It seemed so simple, yet so powerful. Samantha noticed Zora's gaze and smiled knowingly. "You're curious, aren't you?" she asked. Zora nodded, feeling a bit embarrassed. "Yes," she admitted. "I don't understand. In my culture, we don't do this. Why would you kiss someone without permission?" Samantha laughed softly. "Well, on Earth, kisses are about trust. You don't need permission if you feel close to someone. It's about the moment, not about rules." Zora was stunned. Could it really be that simple? No rules, no permission. just the feeling in the moment. For the first time since arriving on Earth, Zara began to think that maybe, just maybe, there was something special about how humans lived. It was so free. As the night continued, Zara's mind raced. Earth's customs were strange, yes, but they were also deeply human. She had always been taught that order was everything. But here, there was something else. Something that made Zara question everything she thought she knew. The days on Earth felt longer than expected. Princess Zora's mind was still buzzing with questions about the humans. She had attended countless meetings, visited historical sites, and even participated in several events designed to help her understand Earth's culture. But no matter how much she observed, there was one thing she couldn't wrap her mind around: how humans interacted with each other. It wasn't just the casual hugs or spontaneous laughter. Zara could understand that, to some degree. What truly baffled her was how humans expressed their emotions so openly, without fear or hesitation. They kissed each other without thinking about it, without asking for permission, without waiting for a formal moment. Zara still couldn't understand it. That evening, a small dinner party was held in her honor at the residence of an Earth ambassador. Zara was expected to socialize with the diplomats and get to know their culture more personally. The humans were warm and friendly, but Zara couldn't stop feeling like an outsider. The laughter around her seemed endless, their conversations flowing effortlessly. No one was worried about saying the wrong thing or making mistakes. Sitting at the large dining table, Zara tried her best to participate in the lively conversations, though she still felt awkward. The humans didn't seem to have the same rules she was used to. They joked, they laughed, they talked about their lives with such ease. In the Caithar Empire, such behavior would have been seen as disrespectful, especially in formal settings. But here, it was normal. Her attention drifted as one of the Earth diplomats, a cheerful man named Dr. Blake, leaned across the table to explain something to her. His enthusiasm was contagious, and Zara found herself listening more intently than she had during most of the evening. And that's how we measure the energy consumption in our cities. Pretty fascinating, right? Dr. Blake asked, his eyes sparkling with excitement. Zara nodded, trying to look interested, but her mind was elsewhere. She had always been told that human behavior was unpredictable. But so far, nothing had seemed more unpredictable than the way people moved and touched each other freely, without hesitation. It wasn't just their casual conversation. It was the way they interacted, the way they shared their feelings so openly. Without realizing it, Zara had leaned forward slightly, still trying to understand this strange new world. As she did, Dr. Blake leaned in at the same time, and before either of them could stop it, their lips brushed against each other. It was quick, unexpected, and completely innocent, but the shock on both their faces was immediate. Zara, equally flustered, didn't know what to say. Her heart raced in her chest. In the Caithar Empire, this would have been an enormous social mistake. A kiss, even an accidental one, meant so much more than just a slip of the lips. It could be a sign of affection, of respect, or of something deeper. But here, it had been a simple, unplanned moment. No one had asked for permission. No one had expected it. "I didn't mean to," Zora mumbled, trying to recover. Her voice sounded different to her own ears, quieter, unsure. The table went silent, the laughter stopping as everyone watched. It was awkward, but no one seemed offended. In fact, a few people even chuckled, clearly understanding that it had been an innocent mistake. "Don't worry about it, Princess," Samantha, one of the Earth diplomats, said kindly. "That kind of thing happens all the time here. People don't always think about the rules. They just act on impulse." Zara's mind raced. Was it really that simple? Could it be that the humans didn't need permission to be close to each other? That they could just act on their feelings without worrying about consequences? For the first time since arriving on Earth, Zara began to wonder if there was something she was missing. She had always been taught that every action should be controlled, calculated, and approved. But this kiss, though accidental, had been so natural, so free. The humans didn't seem embarrassed or upset. They just accepted it. Could this kind of freedom be something worth learning? Could Zara, herself, ever become so open, so trusting? As the evening wore on, Zora's mind lingered on the kiss. The more she thought about it, the more she realized it wasn't just a mistake. It had opened a door, a window into something deeper about Earth and its people. Maybe she had misunderstood them. Maybe, just maybe, there was something beautiful about the way humans lived. The rest of the night went by in a blur. Zara tried to act normal, but inside, she was questioning everything she knew about emotions, relationships, and human connection. This simple, unexpected kiss had changed something in her. It was the start of a journey she hadn't expected, a journey into the heart of human nature itself. Princess Zara had never felt so out of place. Every day, she tried to understand the humans, to learn their ways, but the more she saw, the more confused she became. In her world, everything had rules. Every action, every word, every movement had meaning and purpose. But Earth was chaotic. It was unpredictable. And yet there was something mesmerizing about the way the humans moved, how they didn't hesitate to speak their minds or express their feelings. That evening, Zara found herself at another Earth gathering, a celebration of their music and dance. It was part of her mission to understand human culture more deeply, and this time, she wasn't sure what to expect. As soon as she entered the venue, she could hear the lively beat of drums and guitars, the laughter of people, and the sound of voices rising in song. The humans didn't just listen to the music, they became the music. They swayed, they clapped, they spun and laughed, all in time with the rhythm. It was unlike anything Zora had ever seen. There were no formal dances like the ones in her empire, no steps to follow, no carefully practiced moves. Humans simply followed the beat, letting it guide them, letting it move through them. Zara stood on the edge of the room, watching them with wide eyes. Her heart raced as she saw a young woman grab her partner's hand and spin, laughing joyfully. The couple didn't worry about making mistakes or doing it wrong. They just danced, lost in the music, lost in the moment. It was beautiful, and yet it terrified Zora. How could they move so freely? Without thinking, without concern for what others might say or think. In her world, such carelessness would be seen as reckless. Everything had to be controlled. Every action had to be measured. But here, humans were completely unrestrained. As she stood there, a soft voice interrupted her thoughts. "Princess Zora, you look like you need to get out there and dance." It was Samantha, the Earth diplomat who had become one of Zora's few friends on the planet. Zora turned, startled. I don't dance," she said, her voice hesitant. She had never danced in her life. It was not something that was done in the Sci-Fi Empire, and even if it was, it would have been a formal, rigid affair. Samantha laughed. "That's the thing about Earth. There's no need to be perfect. Just feel the music, let it guide you. No one here will judge you." Zara felt a mix of excitement and fear. Could she really do this? Could she let go, even just for a moment? She was the princess, the diplomat. She couldn't afford to look foolish. But Samantha's eyes were kind, and her smile was genuine. Zara took a deep breath and nodded. "All right," she said, unsure of herself but willing to try. Samantha led her to the center of the dance floor, where the crowd was moving in harmony. Zara's heart pounded in her chest as the music grew louder. The beat seemed to pulse through her, and for a moment she wanted to run away. But then Samantha grabbed her hand and pulled her into the rhythm. The music filled Zara's ears, and the worries in her mind began to fade. At first she felt stiff, unsure of what to do. But slowly she started to let go. She swayed, clapped her hands, and even spun in time with the beat. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't controlled. But for the first time since arriving on Earth, Zara felt free. The humans around her were laughing, clapping, and cheering. No one was judging her. No one cared if she made a mistake. They were all just enjoying the moment together. Zara's chest filled with something she couldn't explain. It was a sense of belonging, of being a part of something larger than herself. For the first time, she realized that Earth didn't need permission to live. It didn't need rules to feel connected. The freedom she had seen in the humans, spontaneous, unguarded, and full of life, was something that she had never experienced before. As the night wore on, Zara lost track of time. She danced, she laughed, and she felt something inside her change. Maybe this was the answer she had been looking for. Maybe, for once, it was okay to let go. As the music slowed and the crowd began to thin out, Samantha grinned at Zara. "See, you're a natural." Zara laughed, breathless and happy, for the first time in days. "Maybe," she said, still smiling. "Maybe humans don't need permission to do anything. Maybe that's what makes you so special." Samantha's eyes twinkled. "We don't need permission to live, princess. We just live." For a moment, Zara stood in the middle of the dance floor, feeling the music in her heart. She wasn't just a visitor on Earth anymore. She was part of it. And for the first time, she understood what it meant to be human. Zara couldn't stop thinking about the dance. It had been days since the music-filled night, yet the feeling of freedom she'd experienced still lingered in her mind. On the surface, Earth was a strange, chaotic place, filled with customs that made no sense to her. But beneath the confusion, there was something else, something she couldn't quite explain. For the first time, Zara began to see the truth about Earth and its people. They didn't live by rules and expectations. They lived by their hearts. And it was beautiful. She had spent the last few days in meetings, discussing trade agreements and scientific exchanges, but her mind was no longer on the formalities. She was thinking about the simple moments she had witnessed. The laughter, the closeness between strangers, the way people could be themselves without worrying about what others thought. It was something her own people would never understand. In the Caithar Empire, everything had to be controlled, every feeling measured. But Earth was free. Zara had come to Earth with a purpose, to learn about their civilization, to bring back knowledge to her own people. But the more she learned, the more she realized how much her people had lost. They had become slaves to their rules and customs, shackled by their need for order. Earth's people didn't need permission to live, to love, or to dance. They did it because it was natural. That afternoon, Zara found herself at another human gathering. This one was smaller, more intimate. The humans had gathered to watch a play, a simple story about two lovers trying to find their way in a chaotic world. Zara sat quietly in her seat, observing the way the audience reacted. They didn't just watch the play. They felt it. They laughed when something funny happened, gasped in surprise, and even wiped away tears during the more emotional scenes. For the first time, Zara understood that it wasn't just about the performance. It was about how the humans allowed themselves to feel. No one in the audience tried to hide their emotions or hold back. They expressed everything they felt: joy, sadness, excitement, even fear, without hesitation. Zara looked around, realizing that for all their technology, their advances, it was this emotional honesty that made humans so unique. They weren't afraid to be vulnerable. They didn't hide behind masks of perfection. They embraced their feelings and shared them with the world. As the play ended, Zara found herself clapping, even though she didn't fully understand the story. She had been moved, not just by the performance, but by the openness of the humans around her. They were unafraid to feel, to express themselves, to be themselves. Zara felt a pang of longing. How she wished she could be like them, free from the burden of expectations and rules. After the play, Zara was invited to join a group of humans for dinner. They sat at a large table, sharing food and conversation, laughing easily. Zara had never felt so out of place, yet so drawn in. She had always been told that her position as a princess meant she had to be careful, controlled, and proper. But here, no one seemed to care about titles or status. They just wanted to connect with each other. As the evening went on, Zora's mind drifted again to that moment. The kiss, the dance, the raw emotion she had seen in the humans. It had all been so real. Earth was real. The people were real. And for the first time, Zora wondered if perhaps her world, her empire, was missing something. Something important. Something that could never be understood through rules and structure. Later that night, as she walked back to her quarters, Zora paused and looked up at the stars. Earth's sky was different from the one she had known on her planet. There were more stars here, brighter, more alive. She couldn't help but think about her people. Would they ever understand what she was learning? Would they ever see the beauty in living without permission, in embracing the chaos of life? Zora shook her head. She didn't know the answers, but she was starting to understand something that was more important than any rule or law. It was the truth that Earth's people lived by. Life was meant to be lived, not controlled. Emotions were meant to be felt, not hidden. For the first time, Zora didn't feel like a visitor anymore. She felt like she was beginning to understand the heart of Earth itself. And she was eager to learn more. The days passed quickly for Princess Zora, each one filled with new experiences and moments that made her question everything she thought she knew. Her time on Earth had changed her in ways she didn't fully understand yet. She was no longer just an outsider watching from the sidelines. She was becoming part of the fabric of this strange and vibrant world. That morning, Zara sat in the garden of the Earth Embassy, her eyes scanning the green, open space. The sun was shining brightly, casting long shadows on the grass. She had learned to appreciate these small moments of peace, something she never truly had back home in the Sci-Fi Empire. Her people, the Sci-Fi, were driven by duty, by honor, by order. Every action had a purpose. Every word had meaning. There was no room for idle moments or carefree laughter. But Earth was different. The humans valued freedom, spontaneity, and connection in ways Zora had never imagined. And it wasn't just about the big moments, dances, parties, or dramatic events. It was in the little things too. The way people talked to each other like friends, the way they smiled for no reason, the way they didn't wait for permission to be happy. Zara's thoughts were interrupted by a voice. "Princess Zora, we're ready for you," said Samantha, the Earth diplomat who had become her closest friend on the planet. Zara nodded and stood up, brushing the grass from her clothes. "Thank you, Samantha. I'm ready." The two women walked together to the meeting room, where several Earth officials were waiting to discuss further diplomatic matters. Though the conversations were important, Zara's mind was still occupied by her recent discoveries. She was beginning to see that the way the humans lived was something extraordinary. As she entered the room, the familiar faces of the diplomats greeted her with smiles and polite words. They were all so different from the formal, stiff leaders she was used to back in the Sci-Fi Empire. Here, there was no pretense. No one tried to hide their emotions. Zara felt a sense of ease in their presence, despite the significance of their discussions. The conversation began, but Zara's thoughts kept drifting back to the same place. Earth's emotional freedom. Humans expressed their thoughts so openly, sometimes without thinking, sometimes without worrying about the consequences. There was beauty in it. There was strength in it. At one point during the meeting, Zora couldn't help but ask, "How do you do it? How do you live without constantly worrying about what others think? How do you just be yourselves?" The room went quiet for a moment, and all eyes turned to her. The question had come out before she even realized it, but she didn't regret it. She needed to know. Samantha, who had been sitting next to Zora, smiled kindly. "I think it's something we learn over time. But really, it's about trust. We trust that being ourselves is enough. We don't need to hide our feelings, our fears, or our joys. We let our emotions guide us." Zora's brow furrowed as she processed the answer. It was simple, but profound. Trust. It was something she had never been taught. In the Sci-Fi Empire, trust was earned, and it was always tied to duty, to what you could do for others. But here on Earth, Trust was tied to who you were, not what you could give. She thought about all the moments she had witnessed on Earth. People laughing, dancing, sharing their thoughts, expressing love and fear without holding back. It was as if the humans had unlocked something inside themselves that allowed them to live fully, something Zora had never experienced in her own life. Later that evening, as the meeting ended, Zora found herself walking alone through the embassy halls. The events of the day echoed in her mind. The freedom the humans had, the joy they felt in simply being alive. She realized how much of that she had been missing. In her own world, there had always been pressure to conform, to live by the rules, to do everything by the book. But Earth's people didn't live by books. They lived by their hearts. And Zora was starting to see that it wasn't just about feeling free. It was about trusting that freedom. Zora stopped in front of a large window that overlooked the city. The lights of Earth twinkled in the distance, like 1,000 tiny stars. She placed her hand on the cool glass, feeling the pulse of the planet beneath her. It was alive in a way her own world wasn't. She knew now that her mission was changing. She hadn't come to Earth just to study their culture or bring back knowledge. She had come here to learn how to live, to understand how humans could be so open, so honest, so free. As Zora looked out at the city, she realized that maybe, just maybe, she was ready to let go of the rules that had defined her life for so long. Maybe she was ready to trust in herself, trust in the people around her, and trust in the freedom that came with truly living. The days on Earth were quickly coming to an end for Princess Zora. She had learned so much, seen so much, and felt so much that she wasn't sure if she could ever go back to the way things were. Her mind and heart were both overflowing with new ideas, new emotions, new ways of thinking. Earth had taught her more than she ever could have imagined. Zora had arrived as a visitor, an outsider, a princess sent to learn about Earth's ways. But now she felt like something had shifted. She no longer saw herself as an alien on this planet. For the first time in her life, she felt like she was truly alive. She wasn't just following orders or adhering to rules anymore. She was experiencing life. It was late evening when Zora stood outside the Earth Embassy, looking up at the starry sky. The stars here were different, just like everything else on this planet. They were brighter, bolder, as if they had something to say. And Zora was starting to understand their message. Life wasn't meant to be lived by the book. It wasn't meant to be controlled. It was meant to be felt, to be experienced in all its wild, messy, beautiful forms. She wasn't sure how long she had been standing there when she heard footsteps behind her. She turned around to see Samantha, the Earth diplomat who had become her closest friend. Samantha smiled warmly, her expression full of understanding. "Are you okay?" Samantha asked, her voice gentle. Zora smiled back, but it was a different smile. It wasn't the smile of a princess playing her part. It was the smile of someone who had found a little piece of herself. "I'm more than okay," Zora said softly, her voice full of emotion. I think I've learned what I came here to learn." Samantha raised an eyebrow. "And what was that?" Zora paused, taking a deep breath. "I've learned that I've been living my whole life for other people, following rules, doing what was expected of me. But here, I've learned to live for myself, to trust, to feel. I've learned that being free doesn't mean doing whatever you want. It means being true to who you are." Samantha's eyes shone with pride. "That's a big lesson, and I'm glad you learned it." Zora took a step closer to Samantha. "I think Earth has something special. You all don't need permission to live, to love, to be happy. You just do it." She paused. "And I don't think I can go back to the way I was. I can't unlearn what I've learned here." Samantha nodded, understanding the depth of Zora's words. "Then don't go back. Stay with us. Live here. Experience life the way you were meant to." The words hit Zora like a sudden realization. She had spent her whole life trying to fit into a mold, trying to meet the expectations of her people. But now she realized there was no mold. There was no right way to live. The only right way was the one that felt true to her. Zara felt a surge of emotion rise within her, a mix of hope, fear, and excitement. She had always been a princess, bound by duty and rules. But now, standing on this strange, beautiful planet, she felt a freedom she had never known, a freedom that called to her. Without thinking, without hesitation, Zara took Samantha's hands in hers. It was a gesture so simple, yet so powerful. And in that moment, something shifted between them. It wasn't just the touch of two people, it was the connection of two souls, each learning to trust, to let go, to be real. Samantha looked into Zara's eyes, her gaze soft. "Are you sure?" Zara nodded, her heart beating faster. "I'm sure." And then, with a feeling of certainty that she had never felt before, Zara leaned forward and kissed Samantha. It wasn't a kiss of obligation or politeness. It wasn't a kiss of duty. It was a kiss of freedom. A kiss that said, "I am here. I am real. And I am finally living." The kiss was soft, gentle, yet full of everything Zara had learned on Earth: trust, honesty, and the power of simply being true to oneself. When they pulled away, Zara felt a weight lift from her shoulders. She didn't need permission anymore. She didn't need to hide. She was free. Samantha smiled, her eyes sparkling with understanding. "Welcome to Earth, Zara," she whispered. And for the first time, Zara knew she was exactly where she was meant to be.